Every major economic crisis, 2008 financial crash, 2020 pandemic, dot-com bubble, Great Depression, creates two groups of people, those who are destroyed financially and those who become millionaires. The difference isn't luck, timing, or insider knowledge, it's preparation. The people who get rich during crises are those who built financial resilience before the crisis hit. They had cash reserves, zero debt, stable income streams, and the psychological strength to act when everyone else was panicking. Meanwhile, the people who get destroyed are those caught unprepared, over-leveraged, living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, with no emergency fund. When crisis hits, they're forced to sell assets at the bottom, take desperate jobs, and spiral into financial ruin. I'm Kyle, and today I'm breaking down exactly what you need to do before the next crisis to position yourself to capitalize instead of collapse. This isn't fear-mongering, it's strategic preparation. Crises are inevitable. The only question is, will you be ready? Let's dive in. Here's the harsh truth. Crises don't create opportunities. They reveal who was prepared and who wasn't. When the market crashes 40%, everyone faces the same conditions. But person A, who has $50,000 cash saved, zero debt, and a stable job, can buy assets at 40% discounts and multiply their wealth. Person B, who has $0 saved, $30,000 in debt, and an unstable job, is forced to sell assets to survive or goes bankrupt. Same crisis, opposite outcomes. The key insight: wealth isn't built during the crisis, it's built before. The crisis is just the moment when preparation gets rewarded and unpreparedness gets punished. If you wait until the crisis to prepare, it's too late. You're already caught in survival mode. The people who thrive during crises spent years building financial fortifications, emergency funds, diversified income, low expenses, zero consumer debt, and liquid capital ready to deploy. When chaos arrives, they're calm, strategic, and opportunistic, while everyone else is panicking. Let's break down what you need to do before the next crisis. First, build a 6 to 12-month emergency fund. This is non-negotiable. If your monthly expenses are $3,000, you need $18,000 to $36,000 in cash sitting in a high-yield savings account, untouchable except for true emergencies. This fund protects you from layoffs, income loss, and unexpected expenses. Without it, you're one crisis away from financial disaster. With it, you have runway to stay calm and make rational decisions. Most people skip this step because it's boring and doesn't generate returns. But during a crisis, cash is king. It's the difference between selling assets at the bottom or buying them. Second, eliminate all consumer debt. Credit cards, car loans, personal loans, pay them off completely. Debt is a vulnerability. When crisis hits and income drops, debt payments become unbearable. People with debt are forced into desperate situations. People without debt have flexibility and options. Third, lower your fixed expenses dramatically. Housing, transportation, and recurring bills should be as low as possible without sacrificing quality of life. If you're spending 40% of income on rent, downsize to 25%. If you have a $600 car payment, sell it and buy a $10,000 used car cash. If you have $300 a month in subscriptions, cut them to $50. The goal is to create massive margin between income and expenses. Why? Because during a crisis, income often drops. Layoffs, pay cuts, reduced hours, but expenses don't automatically drop. If you're living on 90% of income, a 20% income drop destroys you. If you're living on 60% of income, a 20% drop is manageable. Low fixed expenses give you resilience, flexibility, and the ability to save aggressively even during downturns. Fourth, Diversify income streams. If 100% of your income comes from one job, you're vulnerable. Build side income, freelancing, consulting, online businesses, rental income. Multiple income streams mean that if one disappears, you're not financially ruined. Fifth, invest consistently but keep dry powder. The biggest mistake people make is being 100% invested with zero cash reserves. When markets crash, they have no capital to buy the dip. The smart strategy: invest 70 to 80% of your portfolio in index funds, keep 20 to 30% in cash or cash equivalents. During normal times, the cash earns modest returns. During crises, it becomes rocket fuel for wealth building because you can deploy it when assets are 30 to 50% off. Warren Buffett famously holds massive cash reserves specifically for this reason. Sixth, develop resident-proof skills. Not all jobs are equally vulnerable during downturns. Healthcare, essential services, technology, and government roles tend to survive. Luxury goods, travel, hospitality, and discretionary industries get decimated. If you're in a vulnerable industry, either switch or develop skills that make you indispensable. The people who get laid off first are those with replaceable skills. The people who keep their jobs or get hired during recessions are those with rare, valuable skills. Here's what happens during a crisis if you're prepared. Markets crash 40%. While everyone panics and sells, you stay calm because your emergency fund covers 12 months of expenses. You don't need to sell anything. Layoffs sweep your industry. You're not worried because you have side income and 12 months of runway. You take your time finding the right opportunity instead of accepting the desperate offer. Real estate prices drop 30%. You deploy your cash reserves to buy rental properties at steep discounts. Stock prices collapse. You aggressively buy index funds at 40 to 50% off, knowing they'll recover and multiply your wealth over the next decade. Opportunities appear everywhere. Distressed assets, motivated sellers, scared investors willing to sell valuable businesses for pennies. You capitalize while others collapse. This is how millionaires are made during crises, not through luck or genius, but through preparation, discipline, and the courage to act when others freeze.
Now let's look at what happens if you're unprepared. Markets crash 40%. You panic because you need money for bills. You sell stocks at the bottom, locking in massive losses. Layoffs hit. You have no emergency fund, so you're forced to take the first job you can find, often at lower pay. Credit card debt compounds. You've been living paycheck to paycheck, and now, with reduced income, debt spirals out of control. You're forced to sell assets, car, home, investments, at the worst possible prices to survive. Opportunities pass you by because you have no capital, no stability, and no mental bandwidth to think strategically. You're in pure survival mode. By the time the crisis ends, you've lost years of financial progress, and you're starting over from scratch, or worse, from a deficit. Meanwhile, the people who were prepared have doubled or tripled their net worth. The gap between the prepared and unprepared widens exponentially during crises. Let's talk about the psychology of crisis preparation. Most people don't prepare because crises feel distant and unlikely. The economy is strong. I'll be fine. This is normalcy bias, the assumption that the future will resemble the present. But history shows that crises happen every 5 to 10 years like clockwork. 2000 dot-com crash, 2008 financial crisis, 2020 pandemic, 2022 inflation spike. The pattern is clear. Crises are inevitable, not exceptional. The people who prepare aren't paranoid, they're realistic. They understand that the question isn't if, but when. Preparing for a crisis doesn't mean living in fear. It means building systems that make you crisis-proof. Low expenses, high savings, diversified income, zero debt, liquid reserves. These aren't sacrifices. They're strategic advantages that benefit you during both good times and bad. In normal times, they accelerate wealth building. In crises, they enable wealth multiplication. Here's the opportunity cost of not preparing. If you're unprepared and a crisis hits, You lose 5 to 10 years of financial progress, you sell assets at the bottom, take on bad debt, accept lower-paying jobs, and spend years recovering. If you're prepared, a crisis accelerates your wealth building by 5 to 10 years. You buy assets at 30 to 50% discounts, and when they recover, your net worth explodes. The difference between prepared and unprepared isn't just surviving versus thriving, it's losing a decade versus gaining a decade. Over a lifetime, that's the difference between retiring at 70 or retiring at 50. The cost of not preparing is catastrophic. The reward for preparing is exponential. And here's the kicker. Preparation costs almost nothing. It's just discipline, spending less, saving more, eliminating debt, keeping cash reserves. These are free actions that compound into life-changing advantages during crises. Let's address the objection. But I can't afford to save 6 to 12 months of expenses or keep 20% cash reserves. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. This is the most common excuse, and it's often a symptom of lifestyle choices, not income limitations. The median American household earns $75,000 but has less than $5,000 saved. Meanwhile, there are people earning $40,000 with $20,000 saved. The difference isn't income, it's discipline. If you truly can't save, audit your spending ruthlessly. Most people have $500 to $1,000 a month in waste: dining out, subscriptions, cars they can't afford, housing they've oversized. Cut that waste and redirect it to emergency funds and debt payoff. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it requires sacrifice. But the alternative is being financially destroyed during the next crisis. The choice is sacrifice comfort now to build resilience, or sacrifice your financial future when crisis hits. Most people choose short-term comfort and pay the price for decades. The people who become millionaires during crises share specific traits. They live well below their means, even during good times. They maintain 6 to 12 months of expenses in cash reserves at all times. They have zero consumer debt, credit cards paid off, cars paid cash, no personal loans. They keep 20 to 30% of their portfolio in cash or cash equivalents for opportunistic deployment. They have multiple income streams, so job loss isn't catastrophic. They invest in recession-proof skills and industries. They track net worth monthly and adjust strategies proactively. They stay calm during market crashes and buy when others panic. They view crises as opportunities, not threats. They're patient, disciplined, and strategic. When crisis hits, they're not scrambling. They're executing a plan they've been building for years. By the time the dust settles, their net worth has multiplied, while everyone else is still recovering. At the core, crises create millionaires, but only if you prepare before they arrive. The next crisis is coming. It always does. The question is, will you be ready? Start today. Calculate your monthly expenses and build a 6 to 12-month emergency fund. Pay off all consumer debt aggressively. Lower your fixed expenses by downsizing housing, eliminating car payments, and cutting subscriptions. Build side income streams. Keep 20 to 30% of investments in cash for opportunistic buying. Develop recession-proof skills. Track everything. And commit to being financially unshakable when chaos hits. Tell me in the comments, are you prepared for the next crisis? And what's one thing you'll do this week to build resilience? Crises are coming. Preparation's optional, but the consequences of unpreparedness are permanent. Let's build fortifications together.